end. As the Russia-Ukraine war began, China-backed groups stepped up hacking attempts targeting Russian companies and government agencies. According to the New York Times, it's citing a cyber analysis saying that these attempts had intensified in May 2022, following Moscow's full-scale invasion into Kiev. Even as President Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin publicly praised a new era of cooperation amongst the two nations and declared that bilateral ties had no limits, in fact, in 2023-2024, a Chinese group known as Sanyo posed as representatives of a major Russian engineering firm to gather intelligence on nuclear submarines. This happened in 2023, and this is according to findings by the Taiwanese cybersecurity firm Team T5. Then, Russia-Ukraine conflict has given Beijing a valuable opportunity to observe modern warfare tactics and also assess the effectiveness of Western military equipment. A classified FSB, Russia's domestic security agency, or a counterintelligence document obtained by the New York Times reveals Moscow's growing concerns regarding China's espionage. The document has labeled China an enemy and acknowledges Beijing's efforts to acquire Russian defense technology and learn from its military operations in Ukraine. Russia has never acknowledged the concerns in public. Now, Rostec, Russia's state-owned powerful defense conglomerate, was targeted by one of China's state-backed groups to seek information on satellite communications, radar, and electronic warfare, and this is according to the New York Times report. Some groups using malicious files, they actually use malicious files intended to exploit vulnerabilities in Microsoft Word to penetrate Russian aviation industry targets. The war in Ukraine fundamentally shifted intelligence priorities for both countries. Now, this is all part of this entire New York Times report and study. In 2023, Russian cybersecurity firm Positive Technologies reported that several Russian organizations, including those in the aerospace, private security, and defense sectors, were targeted in cyber attacks. These attacks involved the use of DRAT. DRAT is a malware tool typically linked to Chinese state-sponsored hacking groups. Cybersecurity experts noted that DRAT is a proprietary malware unique to these groups and not available for sale on the dark web, unlike many other hacking tools. Now, reports of China-backed cyber intrusions into Russian entities had even surfaced even before the Ukraine conflict. In 2021, for instance, Chinese hackers reportedly targeted Russian submarine design firms. ये किसी के दोस्त नहीं है. Does that not stand out? Friend to none, foe to all. Let's go straight across to Dr. Anand Ranganathan, author, scientist, political commentator. Zahak Tanveer, Middle East expert, should be joining us any moment now. And Lieutenant General DP Pande, former GOC 15 Corps of the Indian Army. He's with us. General Pande, Zahak, and Dr. Ranganathan. Namaste, Jai Hind. Thank you very much for your time. General Pande, your thoughts with the Chinese, and this is what they're trying to do with someone who's very cold.
So very quickly, I must remind you that how quickly we forgot China is our number one enemy. Pakistan is a very small fry when you compare to China. First is that. Second point, Anand, China steals. China has been stealing not since today. It's been stealing for last about 30 to 40 years. To get ahead, they had a very comprehensive system of sending people for education, training to the West. They have done what reverse engineering is required to be done on each and every possible technology for the Western. They shook hands with the Western powers, with the Americans. They took their technology to get ahead. And look at America and the West. They are now struggling to keep up with the advancement which the Chinese are doing. And coming to Russia, Chinese have been friend to none. Like, let's be very candid, because they have got only one thing, that they are center of the universe and they need to continue to get ahead. The other part I must add here, that in non-kinetic warfare, which is now a very prevalent norm, in which cyber and information domain take very important facet. Between war and peace, there's a huge spectrum. in which there are no allies, there are no friends. So when this is the most dangerous element today is a person who comes out very openly that he is your ironclad friend. You can well imagine what Pakistan is doing to China by allying to US in just last about a month's time. You can well imagine what China, which is past master of intrigue, will be doing to its own friends and partners. So Russia, I'm quite sure, they are no novice in this game. They would be totally aware what the Chinese are doing, and they would have put their various system in place to catch them or protect. But to expect Russia today to come out very openly, and Russians are very quiet people, okay, they, unlike the Chinese and the West, they don't talk too much openly. I'm quite sure they are aware what is happening from the Chinese side. They must be having their walls, their protection systems, their countermeasures in place to protect them from the Chinese, not only from Chinese, from the Ukrainians and the entire West. And the last point which I'll wind up here by saying is that in this whole game of cyber domain, China is far ahead for one simple reason, that they have got a huge army in terms of paramilitary, paid people, non-state actors, which are on their payroll within the country, but more importantly, residing outside in the entire world in the respective areas. So this gives them a major advantage to come from within the target countries to feed them information. And the most vulnerable people today may not be Russia, it is India, in which our enemies within are signing treaties, documents, reaching out, media houses. There are so many people which are going up. One very quick point, Anand.
Ji.
You remember this whole thing about why, when they were getting banned for those the semiconductor chips in which the bugs were being found, and suddenly there was a clampdown which came out last about 4 years, 5 years back.
Yes.
That was a wake-up call for the entire world, that while you are running for the chips and cheap semiconductors and the Chinese equipment, electronic gadgets, every gadget of the Chinese comes with an implant. The bigger problem for India is that we don't have the inner capacities. We are still relying on the Chinese stuff. So every system which we buy, any small chip which comes to India has got an implanted bug which will be sending messages, intelligence back to the Chinese.
Well, a lot of times it is rubbish, but something which stands out, Zahak, with this claim and this worry that the Chinese can activate a chip or they can activate information at any time. Multiple times it's been even proven, even with mobile phones and handsets. A big worry sometimes is that a lot of the forces on ground across the world, not just in Bharat, the Jawans, the soldiers on ground are using phones which are made in China. And what malware it has, what it's accessing data, where it is sending it, nobody knows. But one thing is that they are ruthless when it comes to a whole of government approach, a comprehensive national approach. And whatever they do, it is only to further the interests of China. Is this something that nations need to learn? Whether they extend a hand of friendship or they declare someone a foe, they are always wanting to learn what the other person is doing.
Exactly, Anand. The theme itself, like China is nobody's friend. In fact, I remember back in 2020, May 2020, there was a Saudi think tank, KFSARS, which hosted Richard McGregor. So he mentioned why China cannot be anyone's friend, and he mentioned that anywhere China goes, it puts the territorial dispute, and for that reason, the Middle Eastern countries like Saudi and UAE, they don't involve China militarily, and we have seen that in the past as well. So the Pakistan calls China the Iron Brother, as the fellow panelist was mentioning and talking about it. But China has been charging Pakistan with the highest interest loan, and China has also been supporting Africa. But at the same time, you see, China has been doing the debt trap in Africa, especially in Zambia and Kenya. And China has also promised support to Iran, but under the US pressure, it stopped the oil to Iran. And you have the problem with the Philippines. China has a problem with Philippines. It has a problem with Vietnam. And China had a good deal with North Korea, but at the same time, China ditched North Korea in UN. So we have these, the list of the problems that China has with other countries. But at the same time, when you see the Chinese manufacturing, like the chips and the mobile phones and the applications, it's one of the biggest problems. Even in the United States, we talk about the US, the Americans, they have been talking a lot against the Chinese, the Chinese Communist Party. But at the same time, you see that they are purely dependent on the Chinese chips and the Chinese products and the Chinese manufacturing. So this is one of the biggest challenges right now the world is facing.
No, it's not, but somewhere there is also a learning that a determined Chinese hegemony under the CCP is so far determined that anything and everything that it is sending out of the country, it wants something back in return. And whoever they extend a hand of friendship, they just don't care. If there is a nation going to war with the other, they may be hacking both sides just to see what kind of strategy they are employing. Perhaps to learn that if in case in future there is a conflict, what should they do and how does the enemy think and what do I need to do? This is something perhaps the Chinese are hell-bent upon, and that's something which is coming closer home. General Pande was just saying that. Dr. Ranganathan, good evening. You seem to have joined us in a rush somewhere, the suit, tie and all looks like you just taken some time out of an event to join us, but thank you for doing that. There's just another element. Even as the Chinese were hacking the Russians when the Ukraine war happened, there's more that's happening closer home. I'll just bring that element in and then I'll come to you. Bharat's foes have also come together on one platform. Currently, China is getting overt with Bharat's foes. Ambassador Kamal Sibal has actually made this observation and I'll credit him for this. But the fact is, China, Bangladesh and Pakistan held their first trilateral meeting at an official level in China's Kunming. The meeting took place on Thursday and was attended by key representatives from all three countries. Now, is this another bid to deter regional stability? Or look at the turn of events. A nation that was liberated by Bharat and finds Pakistan as its eternal enemy, that's how it defined it, is today standing with China and posing for photos. General Pande.
So, Anand, China not only steals, but it is like a vulture which feeds off from the prey which has been taken out by others. So, Bangladesh, while it was liberated by India, but the current government, Yunus, has been actually brought in by the Americans, right? So, you imagine what a contradiction it is that the Americans have brought in Yunus, and yet China is willing to parley with the Yunus, which is a plant of the Americans. Similarly, look at on the Pakistan side, right? The Pakistanis have been empowered, enabled, fed and allied with, again, the West and the Americans. The entire funding of the World Bank, IMF, money, loans, their survival from Saudis, from Gulf, is all coming from the Western side. But who's sucking the money out? It is the Chinese. The Chinese are actually everybody. The Chinese have learned from this entire art from the Americans actually, and they are applying it back to the America, possibly 10 times much more harsher. So, frankly, anybody from our country, there are a number of people who keep on talking of shaking hands. We must shake hands, we must have trade, we may have anything. But trust me, Anand, that one element, or rather I'll say two elements you can never trust with or can never be friends with is China, and possibly there is another one which I don't know if you'll agree or not, is Americans. You just can't trust. Because the Pakistanis, you understand where they are. Iranians, you will understand where they are. Russians, you know where they are. But the Chinese and in the West, the Americans, you just don't know when they are going to sink you down. The Chinese are most dangerous when they become a friend. This Sri Lanka realized, a lot of African countries realized after about 10 to 15 years, they got into that dragon debt clause, that very, very stinging claw. Not only it holds you in your with a claw, and thereafter he breathes the fire of debt, wanting things back from you very, very quickly. People have realized all that, but unfortunately Chinese have a very good system. They buy off the leaders, they buy off the media, they buy off the top guys, and thereafter they suck the country dry of the resources with paying very, very little off to the country.
True. And this is the dragon's debt trap that they say, that the Chinese debt trap, which most nations have gotten stuck in. Dr. Ranganathan, your thoughts here. Two facts. Chinese hackers, state-backed hackers hacking into the Russian intelligence systems. On the other hand, listen, they gave a war chest to the Pakistanis, even as the Pakistanis were using American-made patent tanks and equipment in 1971. And now they are standing there in between Bangladesh and Pakistan in this entire meeting in Kunming. Dr. Ranganathan.
Yeah, good evening, Anand, and good evening to my fellow panelists, both of whom are experts. So I reiterate that I speak as a layman. And can I say at the start itself that I agree with each and every word spoken by the two panelists. So there is absolutely zero disagreement. What I'd like to say, therefore, not to waste my allotted time into reiterating what they have said, is to politely say, yes, so what? What I mean to say is, what they have stated are absolute irrefutable facts. What I want to talk about is the other side of the coin, which is also a fact, which is, Anand, that China is winning because the world has allowed it to win. Now, there are two ways a country or someone can win. One, you win on your own. The other is you allow others to make you win. There is one way to make yourself stable. There is another way to destabilize everyone else so that you appear stable. There is one way to make yourself economically strong. There is another way to make yourself economically strong by destroying everybody else's economy, which is what China has done. Now, I can imagine in the 80s, when the world could have taken decisive steps. And the most decisive step that one could have taken was in the aftermath of the Tiananmen Square. There, the world and the world opinion buckled. And from that day on, till today, I'm afraid China has ruled the world. I mean, how else can you explain that you had perpetrated by China the most severe pandemic to have inflicted the world in over a century, destroyed the world economy, killed millions of people, and yet China has escaped unscathed? So whom do we blame? As I said, I completely agree with my previous two panelists. Of course, China is to be blamed. But then should we escape the blame? Please allow me to reiterate. The fact of the matter is that while after our relations soured with Pakistan, especially after Pulwama, we cut off virtually all trade with Pakistan. We removed the most favored nation status we had given to Pakistan. Right now, the state is not zero, but it is absolutely minuscule. But then Galwan happened, COVID happened, and China and all its shenanigans, as far as we were concerned, came out in the open. What is the result? Far from removing or decreasing our trade is at an all-time high with China. Our trade deficit has routinely crossed over the last 3 years $100 billion. So far from punishing China, a rogue state, one-party dictatorial state, I'm not talking of Iran, I'm talking of China. Rather than China being punished, China is being rewarded. When would this end? I'm afraid unless the world stands up with conviction, it's never going to end. So China is going to become stronger and stronger and stronger till such time that it is going to completely dictate each and every aspect of our society, economically, socially, and I dare say, even constitutionally.
See, in this case, one thing we have to credit the CCP is that they have been ruthless in their pursuit of their international policy. It's a comprehensive national power that's the doctrine, and that doctrine is what defines everything. And this doctrine was laid, the blueprint was put down there by Mao Zedong. From 1949 onwards, and this is the year of 75 years of India-Chinese relationships. But the Chinese have been ruthless in its pursuit, and they've been patient. They've played the long game. They're in it for the long game. They're not there for the next election. It's the long game, and that's a learning. The other thing is, foe or friend, you need to know what they are doing. You have to get inside their heads, you have to get inside their intelligence, you have to get inside, and you have to know everything from all sides, because somewhere, someday, this will all come in handy. That's their thought process, and that's something nations need to learn from, because everybody at the end of the day has to look for their own and fend for themselves. Gentlemen, please stay on. We'll just quickly bring in the other current dynamic, that is of Israel versus Iran, and dwell upon that a bit. because there are multiple messagings that have come through in the last 24 hours. US President Donald Trump has said he will allow 2 weeks for diplomacy before deciding whether to launch a strike in Iran. As European and Iranian officials are meeting in Geneva this Friday, the UK's foreign minister has said a window now exists to end the Middle East crisis. So some headway has it been made in the negotiations and the conversations. Though US officials are skeptical of talks, a White House official kept the door open to progress. Benjamin Netanyahu has not ruled out targeting Iran's supreme leader, saying no one in Iran should have immunity after Israel's defense minister said Ayatollah Ali Khamenei cannot be allowed to continue to exist. Now the war is escalating. Sirens are sounding in parts of Israel as Iran has launched another round of ballistic missile strikes. Now, as tensions continue to flare between Israel and Iran, and Washington ponders over a potential military action against the Islamic Republic, one of the US's most secretive aircraft quietly entered the skies above the US capital, the Doomsday plane. That's the Boeing E-4B. It's not an ordinary aircraft, it's a military aircraft version of the Boeing 747-800. If there is a nuclear attack on the ground, then it can fly in the sky carrying America's top leaders. That is why this plane is also called the Flying Pentagon. The Doomsday plane does not fly on normal days. That is why it is named as the Doomsday plane. The last this was used was around 9/11. This plane can fly continuously for more than 11,000 kilometers. 112 passengers can be on board. The President of America, Defense Minister, top military leaders can travel anywhere safely in it. And it can also, if it cannot land, then mid-air refueling is possible with this aircraft. It can sustain nuclear radiation, and it can also operate as a command center. Now, let's get back to General Pande, Zahak Tanveer and Dr. Ranganathan. This is also the day when the Russians have said a regime change in Iran is unimaginable and it will open up a Pandora's box. So, General Pande, how do you see the next few days unfolding?
Okay.
And what's the impact closer home to us?
Anand,
Ji.
Yeah, okay. Anand, what is happening is that while everybody is looking for an escalation, but unfortunately the flux now which has happened, because both Israel and Iran have achieved their partial missions, right? Israel has achieved a partial mission success in terms of neutralizing, let's say 1.5 of 50% of its nuclear infrastructure which they wanted to target, and they have nearly assisted the top leadership of the military leadership of the Iranians. But like I have said previously, the Fordow thing remains probably intact, but then the capacity of nuclear enrichment which Iran wanted to develop in next about couple of months may get rolled out for some more time to happen. The problem what is happening is that everybody knows that Donald Trump doesn't have any stomach for more war fighting, and he was never a war fighter technically. He wanted to avoid, and he is now being egged on by the Israelis to partner in this entire thing, at least by giving those web platforms. And the Iranians know this squeamishness of Donald Trump, and they are going to push this gap wider and wider by talking for diplomatic impasse, and thereafter have an outreach to resolve that issue. They know they are in a bind. Their air defense is out and out finished. If today the B-2s, B-52s are launched, they will succeed into pointing the Fordow nuclear plant. But the catch is that is America ready to take on this? And I'm sure they can find via media to enable Israelis to happen. But the problem with Israelis is that if they are not able to do it in next 2 to 3 days time, the first salvo which went out had a great element of surprise in terms of timing and everything. But here and on, the Iranians are going to be ready for an incoming assault, and it will be a little bit challenged. So this comes to a military environment. The second part is of diplomatic impasse, which I'm very, very sure that the Iranians are going to push as much as possible for a ceasefire now, right? And Israelis are not. Let's see how much our Trump can be twisted. I have a feeling that in this mid-term coming, the next set of elections coming, Trump is in a major bind. He's got about 44% support from the American population in American mandate. But even America is looking that if they are able to strike, because their political mission of regime change is unlikely to happen. So in case they are able to strike at least at Fordo, this dip of about 5 to 6% will achieve him some degree of success. He needs to bind, but knowing Trump, what he says for 2 weeks, he may take a decision tomorrow. You may see a onslaught going today or tomorrow. If it doesn't happen a day or two, I don't think it is possible for Israelis or Americans to do anything thereafter. It is going to roll over to some other time next year or next to next year, or whenever Israelis find time. Right? That is what I think. The off-ramp which Iran requires for its own public, they have achieved, because what has happened is nearly about 20 to 30% visible strikes by their missiles and drones have happened in Israel. So the Zionist is going to face the wrath of Iranian, is the element which he's got to prove to his own people and the Muslim Ummah in the world. So therefore he's got a very prestigious off-ramp which will happen for whatever punishment Iran has taken today. And therefore it'll be to its credit, they will be going off in a positive handle in case they are able to wrangle some degree of negotiated ceasefire now. And rest, I can only just very quickly sum up that today Iran is alone. Russia may say anything, China may say anything. They can only provide certain degree of missiles, certain degree of munition, but in terms of world support, Iran doesn't have any. There is no credible power which is there in the region. The Pakistanis who were talking of the friends have just had a great lunch. I am sure he's burping out airspace to the Americans and Israelis today. Well,
the Pakistanis have been admonished by the Iranian ambassador to India also, because he's very clearly turned around and told the Pakistanis that any luncheon or anything in bed with the West is not going to go down well, and let's hope that Pakistan remains a friend of Iran. That's the message that's gone through clearly. So somewhere there is a messaging that's happening. How will this shape up? Because there is this whole lot of enriched uranium which is lying with the Iranians. Now they may be sent back, and a wounded Iran may just redouble its efforts, and they may just get far more covert help from the Chinese and the Russians now to try and develop nuclear capability. If that is not seized and that's not controlled, and somewhere I think behind in Donald Trump's head when he said unconditional surrender and Iran cannot go nuclear, the message was very clear. But that's the case with Donald Trump. Every day the message is clear, but it's different. Now, will the protracted conflict hurt Bharat? Just bringing in this dynamic before I bring in Zahak Tanveer and also Dr. Ranganathan. Bharat imports over 90% of its crude needs. At $10 a barrel increase in the average price of crude oil in FY26, it will typically push up net oil imports by about $13 to $14 billion. Now, enlarging the CAD by about 0.3% of the GDP. Now, there could be an energy crisis. The Strait of Hormuz closure threatens Bharat's oil, LNG supplies. But the oil minister, Hardeep Puri, has assured that there is enough diversified supplies of crude and can source oil from alternative suppliers. So Russia is one of its biggest suppliers. If required, we'll have to buy from Chinese also. Now, the trade route, that's also a problem. If there is chaos in that region, Red Sea, Suez disruptions raise shipping costs by 15 to 20%, and that's somewhere about 6,374 crore. That's the rice exports to Iran. 20,000 to 25 tons of tea goes to Iran. About $3.76 billion trade with Israel, that will also be at risk. There may be a diplomatic strain too. Balancing Israel and Iran ties risks Bharat's regional influence. Over 8 million Bharatiya live in the Gulf region. A prolonged conflict increases risks to their safety and livelihoods too, and potentially leading to evacuation crisis and remittance shocks. By the way, nearly 1,000 Bharatiya will be back in 3 Mahan Air flights. So it's an Iranian special effort. They're opening up their skies later tonight and through the day tomorrow. About 1,000 Bharatiya will be back home. Now, the Indo-Iranian Chabahar port project, crucial for trade access to Afghanistan and Central Asia, could also face setbacks or international sanctions pressure if tensions escalate. Zahak Tanveer and then Dr. Ranganathan.
Yeah, thank you so much, Anand. As we were talking about Mr. Pandey mentioned about the regime change aspect. So I'd like to touch that regime change aspect as well.
Sure.
And we discussed this yesterday as well. That regime change, as we talked, that it's not easy in Iran to have the regime change. But at the same time, what the world powers are doing right now, as Mr. Pandey mentioned, that Iran doesn't have any world support as of now, and the Britain and French and also the Germany is E3. They're just pushing for the negotiations, and Iran is also okay for the negotiations, but Iran is not okay for the zero enrichments. So they're not okay for the zero enrichments, and they have learned from Gaddafi. Gaddafi gave up the nuclear plans, and also the Saddam, he gave up the plans. But what happened after giving up the nuclear plans? They were dished and they were killed. So Iran knows about it. And when we talk about the Iranian military, so they have like three layers of military: the Artesh military, the IRGC, and the third one is the Basij militia. So they control the entire Iran. We know that there are a lot of people inside Iran who wants the regime change, but the military and the militia control the deep state. It's very difficult to have the regime change. And in fact, the Israeli President Herzog, he clearly mentioned yesterday that Israel is not looking for the regime change as of now. If regime change happens, that it's good for the Iranians. That's what he mentioned. But even Israel is not looking for the regime change. But what Israel is right now looking for, as Mr. Pandey also mentioned, that they want the Farda to be destroyed and demolished completely. And once Farda is done, then I think Israel's job is done. And Israel is the only entity in the entire Middle East which can control the entire Iranian militia and the entire Iranian terror infrastructure. So no other country can handle Iran as of now. So from the pushing point of view, the first one is to end the ballistic missile support. It's not only about the nuclear facilities, it's not about the nuclear enrichment. It's also about to end the advanced ballistic missiles program. Like the Iran has the MBBM and IRBM, intercontinental. So they have been supporting a lot of militias, especially the Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis in Yemen, and the half of the Iraqi militias. They have been supporting the half of the Iraqi militias. So right now, what U.S. and Israel want from the Iran is that to stop the ballistic missile program, and the second thing is to disband the militias which are operating in the Middle East. And obviously, Iran is okay for the negotiations, but they're not okay for the zero enrichments. That's my observation.
So, but what kind of negotiations if there is no zero, if they don't agree to zero enrichment? And will Israel use this time to try and continue to pound Iran's installations and also attack not just their intelligence, their military capabilities, but also somewhere target some of their militia, their Iran-sponsored militia, to try and wipe out as much of the Hydra as they can, or chop off as much of the Hydra heads as they can? Dr. Ranganathan, the impact on Bharat also is important to consider. Ji, your thoughts?
Absolutely. Just a couple of points out here, Anand. As they say, the adage goes, a week is a long time in politics. 2 weeks is an eternity in a war. So when Trump says his decision to join or not to join will be taken after 2 weeks, I'm afraid that'll be too late. I think he's going to, General Pande is right, he is going to have to make the decision, because Israel also is now feeling the pinch, to be honest with you. There are a lot of Iranian missiles that are slipping through the Iron Dome and other air defenses. So that is a worrying factor for Israel. So I think America has to make that decision sooner than later. And ironically, I speak as a layman out here, if it does, that is exactly what Putin is waiting for. It will be a godsend for him if America joins the war, because he's going to use this war as a lever to manipulate the machinations of the Ukraine-Russia war. Remember that if the West and America had not supported Ukraine in the war with Russia, then Russia would have completely run over Ukraine. It hasn't done so. So Russia is going to supply Iran as much as it can to elongate the Iran-America, Iran-Israel war as long as possible. It is going to be a stalemate with terrible consequences for the rest of the world. You mentioned about the oil prices and other. The second very quick point, the democratic world is praying that a regime change doesn't happen, because I can bet my bottom dollar every time America has tried to do a regime change,
Yeah.
after a few years, has to talk to the same people that it changed. You look at Afghanistan,
Yeah.
when it orchestrated, now it is talking to the Taliban. You look at Syria, I mean, for heaven's sake, the president had a $10 billion bounty on his head. And a week ago, he shook hands with President Trump. You look at Libya, you look at every other country that America has orchestrated a regime change, it has gone to the dogs, and the same regime has returned. So, who knows, if America orchestrates a regime change in Iran, it would be talking to Khamenei after 3 or 4 years. So, that is obviously out of the question. As far as India is concerned, let's be very honest about it. We are ruled by a lot of conglomerate where it is very difficult to put one foot wherever you might do in, sorry to use the word dog. The fact of the matter is, as you correctly put it, we need oil, we need resources, we need Iran. Iran was a friend. In the last 3 or 4 years, something has happened that Iran has moved away from this so-called cast iron friendship. You remember the very unsavory statements of Khamenei as far as Kashmir was concerned, repeated statements talking about the freedom movement of the Kashmiris out there, oppressed Kashmiris,
Yes.
Muslim world. So both Turkey and Iran try to manipulate their relations with non-friendly or non-overtly friendly countries with this Muslim brotherhood question. And India always gets trapped. I think the time has come for us to openly say either you are with us or you are against us. This walking on thin ice for us is no longer going to matter. That is what my assessment is.
No, very well put and very insightful. Different perspectives, not in disagreement, but also presenting a different facet to this entire conflict. Last word with General Pande. Yes, sir. We'll wind up after that.
So, Anand, I think this worry about Hormuz being closed is slightly unnecessary, because I feel that any trade route which Iranians go close will have major ramifications for the Iranians. Any lesson, if you want to learn from the Cold War after Doklam or Galwan, which happened between India and China, or between Ukraine and Russia, that any prolonged conflict, you need to continue the life of trade as is possible, as much as possible. Like Russia is thriving and surviving only because they have allowed the trade to continue, and Iranians possibly understand the moment they close Hormuz, while there will be a jump in prices all over the place, but everybody who will earn the most, the Russians will earn the most, right?
Yeah.
So we have to see in this whole cycle that while one enemy of America or Israel is going to get less benefit, there is another one which is going to thrive on it. So this cycle, and I don't think Iranians are going to close down.
Right.
Second is in our relationship with Iran. While there has been a challenge because of certain reasons in last few years, but our relationship with Iran, in spite of their public nuances against Kashmir and everything, remains at the diplomatic level very, very cordial. So they will reach out and assist India, because there are other layers of connection. We've got a large number of Shia population with us. It's a Shia country per se.
Right.
I don't want to get into more details, but the fact is there is a huge relationship which continues to go between India and this thing, and India cannot compromise its autonomy for Israel or Iran.
Right.
It will have to continue to go very deftly between the two. It just can't let go of Iran, because we have got very, very significant problems on our hand.
Right.
In case we let go of Iran, our entire connection to the West and to the Central Asian Republic, which takes off from Chawar and other routes, it will be compromised. So that, I think, is one angle which we have to look at it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Brilliantly articulated there, gentlemen. Always taking the right stand in the interest of our viewers and also the nation. Thank you so much for joining us here on this Friday edition. Thank you. The British have always had a problem quitting Bharat. And nothing exemplifies this more than the story of the British F-35B fighter jet that sought permission to make an emergency landing in Thiruvananthapuram airport on Sunday. Yes, 6 days ago. This jet shows no signs of leaving. The word is that it suffered from a technical issue, but given that it is proving to be difficult to solve, clearly it is more than just an issue that looks to be a problem. Sources have told us that it is related to hydraulics. As we await word, some Bharatiya, with a sense of humor, have actually put the plane on auction on OLX, a website to sell used cars. The plane was part of a joint exercise between the Indian Navy and when it broke off, citing problems. It was originally part of the strike force of the HMS Prince of Wales that is still cruising at about 100 nautical miles off the coast of Bharat. For a time, its pilot kept a lonely vigil, refusing to even abandon his precious ward. The scene of the pilot Mike standing vigil by the craft through sun and rain intrigued and impressed the officials. It was only after the Indian authorities extended CISF cover to the aircraft that the pilot did leave its side. He's currently at the terminal, but still keeping a hawk's eye, even from a distance, at this craft. Now here's a look at how the story of this stealth fighter jet has played out over the last few days. The curious case of the F-35B. Here's the timeline. 14th of June at around 8:50 p.m., it takes off from the HMS Prince of Wales aircraft carrier in the Arabian Sea. June 14th, 9:20 p.m., the pilot contacts the Thiruvananthapuram airport and requests for landing clearance. Around 9:30 p.m. on the same day, the aircraft lands at the Thiruvananthapuram airport after declaring low fuel. June 14th, 10:30 p.m., pilot Mike is escorted from the jet for security procedures. Around 11:15 p.m., Royal Navy helicopter lands with a two-man crew and it stays overnight. 15th of June, 11:20 a.m., 7 Royal Navy technicians arrive. The aircraft grounding is extended. 15th of June, 9:54 p.m., the IAF confirms emergency landing of the F-35B and says support has been provided. 16th of June, F-35B reported to be grounded due to hydraulic failure. June 16th, CISF cover of grounded F-35B is also extended. Till June 18th and 20th, these 2 days, the F-35B enters day 4-5 of being grounded at the Kerala airport, and we are currently at day 6. Group Captain MJ Vinod is with us, former fighter pilot, IAF. Group Captain, you must be impressed by pilot Mike that he stands vigil at his craft. Now, is that something that is taught within the Air Force? Or is he worried that some may just take away the secrets of how weaponized this F-35 is and whether or not how it's tailor-made for the British needs?
Anand, good to be back on your show. In fact, none of these I was looking for any VC funding so that I can quickly buy this aeroplane from OLX. So, be that as it may. But see, two things that stands out very clearly. One is it is a very bad optics as far as F-35 is concerned. I mean, not that it lacked any bad optics. Bad crashes, 18 of them, I think. One of them we covered, if you remember. It was, I think, off Georgia somewhere when it went vanishing for a couple of days, and we discussed that ad nauseum in our show. So, not that it lacks bad optics, because it is single engine and a very bad engine at that. So it is kind of a lemon. So
it is kind of a lemon. As the British fighter F-35 fighter jet stranded in Kerala, top government sources have revealed more details to CNN News 18 that the F-35 in Kerala has serious mechanical fault. They have brought some helicopters earlier with equipment not working, and now one bigger plane is coming with technicians to actually handle the problem. Manoj Kumar Gupta getting us these details. Some hydraulic problem is also reported. Multiple problems in the F-35. They tried to lift and some hydraulic problem also happened. Now, what is the nature? This is quite embarrassing for the British Navy and the British Air Force.
And for the aeroplane as well.
Yeah.
F-35, they are now planning to sell. And if you remember today's Macron's tweet, Macron has put out Rafale. He says, Rafale is calling you and for European security. So even Macron is trying to cash in on the bad optics that F-35 provided so that he can sell his aeroplane, because everything now boils down to the orders that is floating around, and especially in the Southeast Asia, in India, Everyone is vying for this order. So this F-35 has clearly done a extremely damaging job. Not that I'm not impressed with its technology. I am. That
Right.
is how, even with hydraulic failure and mechanical failure, pilot could land in Trivandrum. So hats off to him. He's
Right.
tried the standing guard, but for 6 days, I think he would have fallen down. And
Well,
secondly,
I have to stop there and pause there, and with a salute to Pilot Mike and also those who had the sense of humor to upload this on a buy and sell site like OLX. But the question is, how could OLX upload an airplane for sale without verifying the details? We leave you with that. Moving on, the officials investigating the Air India flight AI-171 crash are actually closely drawing parallels with a February 2020 incident at the Gatwick Airport in the United Kingdom involving an Airbus A321. The Air India 171 Dreamliner, after its takeoff from Ahmedabad Airport, gained an altitude of 625 feet, while the Airbus had gained an altitude of 3,580 feet. The pilots of both the aircraft, AI-171 and A321, made a mayday call. The incident, which involved an Airbus A321, saw planes, both engines, malfunction shortly after takeoff. Fortunately, the Airbus plane had gained an altitude of almost 3,580 feet and was able to make a roundabout and touch down 11 minutes after takeoff. However, the people on board the Air India plane were not that lucky, as it came crashing down just 36 seconds after takeoff. The UK Air Accident Investigation Branch later investigated the Airbus incident and found that the reason for the engine failure was the fuel system contamination. In the 2020 Airbus incident, there was no fault found by the takeoff, during takeoff or before the takeoff by the engineers. Now let's update you with the probe status of the AAIB, or the Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau. The AAIB has mapped terrain and objects near the crash site for possible impact clues. Distribution and pattern of debris at the crash site is also being studied in detail. Site photography and videography has been completed. It was completed on day one itself. Local police helped the AAIB investigation team to record key witness statements and two distinct but crucial components of the aircraft. The flight data recorder and cockpit voice recorder have been retrieved, although in damaged condition. Aircraft data, GPS logs, CCTVs and surveillance devices are also being examined by the probe team. AAIB is in touch with ATCs and radar stations to retrieve voice and data records, which will be scrutinized. Joining us now is Captain Sam Thomas, former pilot and president of the Airlines Pilot Association of India, ALPA. Captain Thomas, thank you very much. This is Anand Narasimhan here. My first question to you is this entire theory of fuel contamination. The difference perhaps many are making between AI-171 and A321 is AI-171 had made a lot of sorties. It had been flying non-stop over the last week before this takeoff incident happened in Ahmedabad. So this aspect of fuel contamination and that leading to the dual engine failure, how plausible is that and what could cause it? Is that a possibility?
Anand, thank you. I'd be grateful if you could still refer to me as a pilot. I'm not a former pilot. I have about 10 years of flying left.
Apologies.
So,
we'll
anyway,
erase the former for good now. Captain Thomas. Gee.
Not a problem. What we are stating is that we are under strict guidelines from our parent organization, which is headquartered in Montreal, that it is not allowed or anything to speculate on any kind of matter when the investigation is ongoing. Yes, there have been many possibilities that have been put forth, and the American TikToker was one of the best. And unfortunately, now you see how that goes. Now, what we tried to, probably inadvertently, the media is being played by some of the outside sources as to what the narrative should be. You yourself, Anand, have said that the data black boxes are damaged. Has anybody seen the damaged black box? What I'd like to say is it's mounted on the tail section. The tail section didn't even lose its paint. It was perched on top of the building that it crashed on. So I suspect that that may not be the truth. And also, downplaying India's capability is not acceptable to Airline Pilots Association of India. do you mean to say we can't decode these DFDRs here? We've been doing it for quite some time. And that is what we are pointing out. And also, what about that lovely facility that you opened about 6 months back, inaugurated by none other than the
Correct.
Civil Aviation Minister, Honorable Minister, and you turn around and say that you don't have this one. It's preposterous. And please don't downplay India's capabilities and Indian pilots' capabilities. This is a humble request to all the TikTokers and everybody else.
No, I'm totally on board with you, because we asked this question, and the reason I said is that it has been damaged is because this is what sources close to the investigating agencies and from the government told us here at CNN News 18, and this happened on Thursday, where they said the reason it's being sent to the US is because it's in such broken condition that the current lab that has started here does not have the capability to decode it or decrypt it. Now, that's what we are reporting. Now, whether it's plausible, not plausible, I think a lot of views are saying that if we can hack phones and if we can hack burnt laptops and we can decrypt it, why can't we do a DFR or a CVR? So, it's a plausible question, Captain Thomas. Dr. Ranganathan is with us. But I just want to understand from you, what is this entire scenario of a fuel contamination? What causes fuel contamination? So, I'm not saying it's got to be related with AI 171. I'm just asking what causes it, and can that lead to a dual engine failure?
Okay, let's keep AI 171 out. And fuel contamination is one of the possibilities that can pull out the power of the engine. Now, fuel contamination is generally by water. What had happened with the British Airways airplane is that a phenomenon called cold soaking. When you fly at high altitudes for long durations of time, there is water vapor that crystallizes within the fuel tanks. Now, when you descend to warmer altitude, particularly during landing, these ice crystals turn into water and move through the fuel system, thereby causing what's a vapor lock. And that theoretically has the possibility to shut down both the engines. That is what fuel contamination is about. Not any other sediment or anything like that, which is checked before every refueling. So it's a very foolproof process. And like you said, this is one of the reasons that could bring down both the engines of an airplane.
Right. Dr. Ranganathan, thank you for joining us back again. Your thoughts on this? Where it's going?
Yeah,
Captain Thomas says, how is it that we can't decode a flight data recorder? We are supposed to be one of the best in doing this decryption business.
Yeah, so, a couple of points on that, what, the previous panelists very rightly made those observations. Number one, it is still acceptable if we don't have that expertise, although it is inexplicable because, for India to have landed on the moon, to have circled Mars and not have the capability to decode a black box is in the realms of fantasy. And black box is not supposed to be handled like a nuclear device. It is supposed to be extracted from a terrible crash site. So, the damage to the black box, as a layman I speak, is preordained. I mean, that is what black boxes are supposed to be rescued from. So for us to say we don't have the capability to extract information from a heavily damaged well, most of the black boxes are heavily damaged to begin with. Be that as it may, even if we can say we don't have the capability, that's also fair enough. I mean, we don't have a capability in a lot of domains. No, I speak on matters of science. I mean, for example, the Covishield vaccine was actually made in Oxford, that 90% of the Indians were vaccinated with. The Covaxin one was made in India, but we didn't have that expertise as far as Covishield was concerned. So we got it from outside, same as with drugs. So that's still fine. What I find is unacceptable is the conflict of interest. We are sending the black box, if we are, to the country where the headquarters of the plane that crashed, that company is. Are you telling me that other Western nations, other than America, don't have the expertise to decode a quote-unquote heavily damaged black box? It's a clear conflict of interest. You have a Boeing plane that crashed, you extract that black box, and you send it to the country that has Boeing headquarters. So at least that I can still, as I said, it's still fine if we don't have the capability. But let us at least go to the nation that has a capability that is not having the headquarters of Boeing.
Fair point. By asking these questions, one aspect is there in public domain that it is beyond the realm of a human error. Now, initially, that was what was being pointed out, and a lot of people who were not there, sadly, to defend themselves, were being blamed unfairly. And an entire group of people who are largely responsible for keeping us safe while takeoff and landing were also being bracketed in the same realm. And that was being unfair. But somewhere it's moving beyond that realm, and initial investigations show that it is beyond the realm of a human error. Let's see how the investigation unfolds, and some pertinent questions have been asked. I've run out of time, but Captain Thomas and Dr. Ranganathan, thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank
Namaste.
Thank you, sir.
Co-presented by. This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
We're learning that Australia has suspended operations at its embassy in Tehran and told its officials and their dependents to leave Iran amid the deteriorating security situation. In a statement on Friday, the Australian Foreign Minister Penny Wong has said that the country's ambassador to Iran would stay in the region to help with Australia's response to the Iran-Israel conflict. So now Australia is getting its diplomats out of Iran in the midst of this escalating tension. This is a direct missive that's come out of Australia, where they have mentioned that the diplomats, along with their wards, their family members, are to move out of Iran along with their dependents. And this, of course, is in the wake of the deteriorating security situation. My colleague Akanga Swarup is with us with more details. Yes, Akanga.
Right. Griha, the Foreign Affairs Minister Penny Wong has made this announcement that it's going to be extremely difficult for Australians to leave Iran because the airspace is shut. So even though they are looking at evacuating Australians from Iran, the challenge, of course, remains the airspace. We've seen how this is also posing a trouble for air travel across the world, something that's being flagged off by Air India as far as India is also concerned. But coming to Australians, there are about 2,000 Australians in Iran and their families in Iran, and around 1,300, in fact 1,200 are in Israel, who are looking at evacuations. So as we speak, it's not just Australians in Iran, but also in Israel that Australia is looking to get evacuated. They are very much aware that it is a very difficult procedure, and they are now looking at increasing the capacity to assist. But the reality on the ground is, of course, extremely unstable. We've already seen the kind of challenges that have been posed to India in the evacuation of all of those Kashmiri students. So the security situation, obviously very difficult. The airspace remaining shut. We'll have to see what is the kind of assistance that the Iranian regime can provide at the moment, given that they are very much absorbed in the conflict. But what they have done is also deploy their own consular staff to Azerbaijan from Tehran. And so, there are alternate routes that are being considered. India considered the Armenian route. Australia is looking at Azerbaijan.
Okay.
It's the closest land crossing available to them. So this is the latest that we're learning.
Thank you so much for that, Akanga. With that, let's take a look at this next report by CNN's Fred and photojournalist Claudia Otto, as they are the first Western journalists in Tehran since the conflict with Israel began this Friday. Take a look at their ground report.
We're inside the Iranian state broadcasting company, IRIB, which was hit by an Israeli airstrike a couple of days ago, and you can see the damage is absolutely massive. I'm standing in the atrium right now, but if you look around, this whole area has been completely destroyed. All of the offices, all of the technology that they have inside here, the broadcast technology, everything has been rendered pretty much useless. All right, so we're going to go inside the building now. They have told us that we need to be very careful because obviously there might still be unexploded parts of bombs in here or something like that. What we see here is the actual studio where an Iranian state TV anchor was sitting and reading the news when the strike hit. You can see here that is an anchor desk right there. And of course, when it happened, the anchor was reading the news, and then all of a sudden there was a thud. The studio went black. At the beginning, she got up and left, but then later apparently came back and finished the newscast and is now being hailed as a champion of Iranian media. Some of the main bulk of the explosion must have been here because this place is absolutely charred. And if we look back over there, that actually seems to be the main part of what was the newsroom, with a lot of the desks, computers, printers, phones. You can see how much heat must have been emitted by the impact and by the explosion. The phones that they had here are molten. Here also, the keys molten, this screen, and there's actually someone's lunch still at their desk, standing here, which probably they would have been wanting to eat until they had to evacuate the building. You can see there's a spoon here that's also been melted away by this explosion. All of this is playing very big here in Iran. There's a lot of public anger that the Israelis attacked this site, and certainly the Iranians are saying that they condemn this and that there is going to be revenge for this.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
We're learning that Australia has suspended operations at its embassy in Tehran and told its officials and their dependents to leave Iran amid the deteriorating security situation. In a statement on Friday, the Australian Foreign Minister Penny Wong has said that the country's ambassador to Iran would stay in the region to help with Australia's response to the Iran-Israel conflict. So now Australia is getting its diplomats out of Iran.
Very good evening. You're watching Brass Tacks. I'm Akanga Swarup. Call it 2 weeks, 14 days or 336 hours. That's the time the US President Donald Trump needs to initiate action against Iran, or maybe not. The White House statement has said, and based on the fact that there's a substantial chance of negotiations that may or may not take place with Iran in the near future, I will make my decision whether or not to go within the next 2 weeks. Essentially, Donald Trump has given a 2-week window for diplomacy. Does the American leader hope that additional strikes by Israel will force Tehran to the negotiating table? Or is it a window to bolster America's military? The question remains, will Donald Trump's